चालू है? Good morning everyone. I am Dr. Hardik Sethi, Assistant Professor, Department of Orthopedics. So today we are going to talk about splints and traction. So what is a splint? A splint is a rigid support with padding made from metal, plaster or plastic to support, protect or immobilize an injured or inflamed part of the body, which helps prevent further injury and minimize pain. What are the indications of splinting? So if the patient has a fracture, a sprain, some joint infections, tenosynovitis or arthritis, we can splint the patient. It is used to reduce and prevent contractures, to increase the grip strength, stabilize and rest joint in a ligamentous injury, to correct deformity, to support and immobilize joints and limbs post-operatively until healing has occurred. What are the contraindications of splinting? Compartment syndrome and skin at high risk for infection. A splint can be made of plaster of Paris. Plaster of Paris is made from gypsum calcium sulfate dehydrate. When it becomes wet, there is an exothermic reaction, it recrystallizes. So, because of the exothermic reaction, it becomes really hot and it can burn the patient. The average setting time for plaster of Paris is 3 to 9 minutes. And average drying time is 24 to 72 hours. Factors which decrease the setting time. What do you mean by setting time is the time in which a plaster sets. So hot water, salt, borax and resins. Factors which increase setting time are cold water and sugar. For upper extremities, we generally use 8 to 10 layers of plaster of Paris. For lower extremities, we use around 12 to 15 layers and up to 20 if it's a big person. What are the advantages of plaster of Paris? It is easier to mold and less expensive. Difficult is it is more difficult to apply, and if it gets wet, it gets soggy, and so it can come off. Now there are ready-made splinting material also. Plaster OCL, 10 to 20 sheets of plaster with padding and cloth cover, and there's a fiberglass which sets rapidly. It is less messy, stronger, lighter, wicks moisture better, and it is less moldable. Disadvantage for this is it is more expensive and it is difficult to mold. Fiberglass is a little expensive, but it is lighter, sets faster. Now, there is something called as prefabricated splints. They are plastic shells lined with air cells, foam or gel components. They have the same advantages and disadvantages as a fiberglass splint. Now, pre and post splint checks. You can remember the mnemonic facts. So we should check for function, arterial pulse, capillary refill, temperature of the skin and sensation. Now splints for upper extremities. First is a figure of 8 splint. This kind of a splint is used in clavicular fractures. Most figure of 8 splints are prefabricated. Application is simple. Apply with the patient standing, hands on the iliac crest, that is on your waists, and shoulders should be abducted. So that's an example of a figure of 8 brace. Next is shoulder immobilizer, generally used in humeral and shoulder injuries. If there is a proximal humerus fracture or a scapular fracture, this kind of an immobilizer can be used. So there is a sling which supports the weight of the shoulder. The swathe holds the arm against the chest to prevent shoulder rotation. So place the injured arm in the sling with elbow at 90 degrees of flexion. Next, place the strap, that is the swathe, that is attached to the sling over the patient's head so that the weight of the arm is supported. Next is an aeroplane splint, generally used in brachial plexus injuries. Next is an elbow or forearm long arm posterior slab. So basically the indications are forearm and elbow injuries, olecranon radial head fractures and distal humeral fractures. It is not recommended for unstable fractures. Applied from the palmar crease, wrapping around the lateral metacarpals, extending up to the posterior arm with elbow flexed at 90 degrees. It's an example of long arm posterior splint. Now splint for the wrist and forearm. This is a volar forearm splint. Indications are distal forearm and wrist fractures, soft tissue hand or wrist injuries or sprain, applied from the distal palmar crease to 2/3 of the forearm. It allows elbow and finger range of motion. So keep in mind to keep the elbow and the fingers free while applying this kind of a slab. That's an example for the volar forearm or a cock-up slab or a cock-up splint. Sugar tongue. Forearm sugar tongue slab is almost similar to that of a long arm posterior slab, but it extends from MCP joints on the dorsum of the hand, tracks along the forearm, wraps around the back of the elbow to the volar surface of the arm and extends down to the mid-plantar palmar crease. It immobilizes the wrist, forearm and the elbow. That's an example of sugar tongue forearm splint. Now for the hands and fingers, first is the ulnar gutter splint, used most common for boxer fractures, that is the fifth metacarpal fracture. It can be used for soft tissue injury to the little and the ring finger. Radial gutter splint is used for fractures, phalangeal and metacarpal and soft tissue injuries of the index and the middle fingers. The ulnar gutter splint extends from the distal interphalangeal joint to the proximal 2/3 of the forearm. It should immobilize the ring and the little finger. Metacarpophalangeal joints should be in 70 degrees of flexion. Proximal interphalangeal joints should be in 30 degrees of flexion, and distal interphalangeal joints should be no more than 10 degrees of flexion. So that's how you put an ulnar gutter splint. Thumb spica splint, indications are scaphoid fractures, thumb phalanx fractures or dislocations. Most common use, gamekeeper's thumb or skier's thumb, or D. Kerwin's tenosynovitis. Now there are certain finger splints also, which are dynamic or static. Dynamic strapping are buddy strappings. We'll come to that later. Dorsal and volar finger splints, phalangeal fractures, though gutter splints probably better used for proximal fractures. For distal interphalangeal joints or for distal phalanx fractures, these finger splints can be used. So basically, they are stack splints, aluminium splints, oval 8-finger splint, cock-up splints, and so on. Now, splints for lower extremities, hip spica cast, mainly used for fracture shaft of femur in children and in young adults when the fracture becomes sticky. Fracture becomes sticky around 3 weeks, maybe earlier in children and young adults. It encircles one or both arms or legs and the chest or the trunk. It is generally strengthened with a reinforcement bar. So that's how a hip spica splint is put on. Now you can see a bar which is fixed in the middle, and it is tied around the waist and both lower limbs. Thomas splint, it is devised by Hugo Thomas, initially for TB of the knee, but now indications are mostly used for shaft femur fractures. It has a ring and 2 bars joined distally. The ring is at an angle of 120 degrees to the inside bar. The ring side is found by addition of 2 inches to the thigh circumference. So you take the circumference of the thigh of the patient and add 2 inches to that, and that's how the ring circumference for the Thomas splint can be found out. The length is the measurement from the highest point on the medial side of the groin up to the heel plus 6 inches. So medial side of the groin to the heel, take a measurement with a measuring tape, add 6 inches to that, and that is the length of your Thomas splint. That's how Thomas splint is put. Volar Brown splint, indication is femur fracture. More convenient than Thomas splint since it has no rings, as the ring of Thomas splint is a common cause of discomfort, especially in old people. There is no built-in system of counter traction, hence it is not suitable for transportation. Now knee splint, what you see in the picture is on the left side is a hinge knee brace, and the right side is a long knee brace. They are used generally for any knee fractures or knee injuries or ligament injuries around the knee. Ankle, posterior ankle splint, indications are distal tibia fibula fractures, reduced dislocations, severe sprains, tarsal or metatarsal fractures. Use at least 12 to 15 layers of plasters. They are placed from metatarsal heads on the plantar surface of the foot, extends back to the back of the leg at the level of the fibular neck. Stirrup splint, indications are similar to that of the posterior splint, enable ankle fractures, less inversion, eversion, and actually less plantar flexion compared to the posterior splint. They are great for ankle sprains, 12 to 15 layers of 4 or 6 inches plaster. Generally for a lower limb, we do not use 4 inches, we use 6 inches of plaster. Dennis Brown splint, it is used for congenital talipes equinovarus, CTEV as you all know it. It is used for successful correction of deformity to prevent relapse. Used throughout the day before the child starts walking. Once the child starts walking, a Dennis Brown splint is used at night and CTV shoes during the day. So that is a Dennis Brown splint. Buddy strapping. They are used for phalangeal fractures of the toes. A small piece of wadding or a swab is placed between the toes to prevent maceration. Fractured toe is secured to the adjacent toe with a tape. So that's how buddy strapping is done. They are generally used for fractures of the toes. Now for spine, cervical collar. It is flexible foam, rigid or an adjustable collar. It encircles the neck to support the skull against the thorax inferiorly. Motion control and keeping warm at cervical level. Soft tissue injury, minor sprains for a first few days after injury. So you have a soft tissue injury or minor sprains, you can use a cervical collar, and it's also used for post-operative immobilization. They are not very useful for very unstable injury patterns. So that is a soft cervical collar. Now, semi-rigid cervical collar, or we call it a Philadelphia collar. It can provide access to the trachea. So if a tracheostomy is required, we can do it through the hole which is present anteriorly. It allows moderate control of range of motion and it is adjustable. 4-post collar indication is neck immobilization in cervical spine injury. It is more stable than a cervical collar, applying pressure to the mandible, occiput, sternum and upper thoracic spine. They can be really uncomfortable. Sumi brace, sternal occipital mandibular immobilizer. Also used in cervical spine injury. It's a rigid frame design commonly used in stable fractures and moderate to severe soft tissue damage. Milwaukee brace. This brace is named after the city of Milwaukee where it was designed. It is used in scoliosis correction. Boston brace, also used for scoliosis correction, used for low curves. So scoliosis which involves the lumbar spine, a Boston brace can be used. Lyon's brace, also used for scoliosis. Spine core brace, also used for scoliosis. Taylor's brace. So Taylor's brace is basically used for a dorso-lumbar immobilization. Basically any injury to the thoraco-lumbar spine. This brace can be used. It is commonly used for osteoporosis, trauma or degenerative spine disease. A lumbar corset used in the treatment of lower back pain and immobilizer after lumbar laminectomy. Let's come to tractions. What is traction? Traction is a method of restoring alignment to a fracture through gradual neutralization of muscular forces. Traction is pulling effect exerted on the part of a skeletal system. It involves use of weights connected to patients with ropes, pulleys, slings, etc. There are two types of traction, skin traction and skeletal traction. Skin traction is the one which you put on the skin. Skeletal traction is the one which you put through the bone. Based on the mechanism, fixed traction is by applying force against a fixed point of the body. Sliding traction is by tilting the bed so that the patient tends to slide in the opposite direction to the traction force. Now, counter traction is something which is used to overcome the muscle spasm. The force applied in opposite direction of the traction force is called a counter traction. Suppose you're giving traction in one direction, applying force in the opposite direction is called as counter traction. This is to overcome muscle spasm. Indication of traction is to reduce the fracture or dislocation, to maintain the reduction, to correct the deformity, to reduce muscle spasm. Advantages are they reduce pain, minimize muscle spasms, reduces, aligns and immobilizes the fractures. They reduce the deformity, they increase the space between the opposing surfaces. Disadvantages are you have to be hospitalized, so it is costly. Hazards of prolonged bed rest because of traction, which are thromboembolism, decubitus ulcers or pneumonia. It requires meticulous nursing care and can develop contractures. Now there are traction suspension systems which are bed and Vulcan beam, splints like Thomas splint, Bowler Brown frame which we already talked about, slings and padding, skin traction, skeletal traction, Steinman pins, Dunham pins or Kirshner wires are used, Bowler stirrup is used, cord, pulleys and weights are used. This is a bed and Vulcan beam. These are the cords which are used to put the traction, and these are the pulleys over which the cords go, and then we can attach weights to the cords. So the amount of weight required depends upon the weight of the appliance, weight of the part of body which is to be suspended, amount of friction present in the system, mechanical advantages of the system employed for suspension. Skin traction is applied over a large area of the skin. This spreads the load and is more comfortable and efficient. The traction force must be applied distal to the fracture site. Maximum traction weight that can be applied using a skin traction is 6.7 kgs, not more than that. Two types of skin traction there, adhesive skin traction, non-adhesive skin traction. So adhesive skin traction are Elastoplast skin traction kit, TracTac, Set-on skin traction kit, OrthoTrac and SkinTrack. Not very important for you guys at the moment. These are the materials which are used for skin traction. As you can see, there is a Benzat joint, wooden spacer with hole, 2 strips of foam, cotton bandage and non-elastic adhesive strapping. So prepare the skin by shaving as well as washing and applying tincture benzoin, which will protect the skin and act as an additional adhesive. Avoid placing adhesive strapping over bony prominences. If not, cover them with cotton padding and then do the strapping. Leave a loop of 5 cm projecting beyond the distal end of the limb to allow movement of fingers and the foot. Non-adhesive skin traction useful in thin and atrophic skin, allergy to adhesive strapping. Frequent reapplication may be necessary for this, and the weight which can be applied is only 4.5 kilograms. Contraindications are abrasion of the skin, lacerations of the skin in area of which the traction is to be applied. So basically any injury at that area, impairment of circulation like varicose ulcer, impeding gangrene, dermatitis. Marked shortening of bony fragments when traction weight is required will be greater than can be applied through the skin. Complications are allergic reaction to the adhesive, excoriation of the skin from stripping of the adhesive strapping, pressure sore around the malleoli and over the tendocalcaneus, and common peroneal nerve palsy. Now, Hamilton-Russell traction used in management of fractures of femoral shaft after arthroplasty, that is replacement operations of the hip. Bucks traction with sling under the knee. This is how the traction is applied. So under the knee there is a Bucks traction and the other traction is along the line of the femur attached to the vertical pole of the bed. Bryant's traction convenient and satisfactory for treatment of fractures of shaft of femur in children up to age of 2 years who weigh less than 16 to 18 kgs. So that's how the traction is applied. The ropes are attached to the ceiling. Modified Bryant's traction, it's almost same as the Bryant's traction. That's how it is applied. Forearm skin traction, adhesive strip with ACE wrap, useful for elevation in any injury, can treat difficult clavicle fractures with excellent cosmetic results. The risk is skin loss. Double skin traction, used for greater tuberosity or proximal humerus shaft fractures. The arm is abducted to 30 degrees as you can see in the figure. Elbow is flexed to 90 degrees. 7 to 10 pounds on the forearm and 5 to 7 pounds on the arm. Risk of ischemia at the antecubital fossa. Dunlop's traction used for supracondylar and transcondylar fractures in children. It is used when close reduction or difficult or traumatic. Forearm skin traction with weight on the upper arm. Elbow flexed to 45 degrees. Same way, finger traps or finger tractions can be applied. Head halter traction, simple type cervical traction, management of neck pain. Weight should not exceed 2.3 kgs. Can only be used a few hours at a time. Pelvic traction, used in conservative management of prolapsed intervertebral disc, may be the most common type of traction that is used in hospital setup. Important skin tractions are Bucks traction, commonest type of traction applied in lower limb. Uses temporary treatment of fractured neck of femur and displaced fracture of acetabulum after reduction of hip dislocation. So in this traction, simple foam is applied to the lower leg as you can see in the figure, and it is strapped around with a bandage and weight is applied to that. Now skeletal traction, it should be reserved for those cases in which skin traction is contraindicated. In patients with lacerated wounds, in patients with external fixators in situ, when the weight required for traction is more than 6.5 kgs. Skinman pin is a rigid stainless steel pin of varying lengths 4 to 6 mm in diameter. A bowler stirrup is attached to the Steinman pin, which then allows the direction of the traction to be varied without turning the pin in the bone. We will come to how it is used. Another pin which can be used is a Dunham's pin. It is identical to the Steinman pin except for a short threaded length in the center as you can see, which engages the bony cortex and reduces the risk of pin sliding. It is used in cancellous bones like calcaneum and osteoporotic bones. Kirschner wires, they are easy to insert and minimize the chance of soft tissue damage and infections. It easily cuts out of the bone if a heavy traction weight is applied because they are not very strong. Most commonly used in upper limb, like olecranon tractions. Applications: use general or local anesthesia, paint the skin with iodine and spirit, mount the pin or wire on the handrail, hold the limb in same degree of lateral rotation as the normal limb and with ankle at right angles. Identify the site of insertion and make a stab wound. Hold the pin horizontally at right angles and long axis of the limb. Apply small cotton wool pads soaked in tincture around the pins to seal the wound. The pin should pass only through the skin, subcutaneous tissue and bone, avoiding muscles and tendons. Complications are introduction of infection into the bone, distraction at fracture site, ligamentous damage, damage to epiphyseal growth plates, depressed scars. Proximal tibial traction is used for distal two-third femoral shaft fractures. Tibial pin allows rotational movements, easy to avoid joint and growth plate. It is placed 2 cm distal and posterior to the tibial tubercle, as you can see in the diagram, the lower diagram. So 2 cm distal and 2 cm posterior to the tibial tubercle. So if I can point out with the mouse, this is the tibial tubercle. So 2 cm posterior and 2 cm distal to the tibial tubercle. So that is the point of pin insertion. Upper femoral traction, lateral surface of the femur, 1 inch below the most prominent part of the femur. So suppose this is the most prominent part of the femur is the greater trochanter, which you can feel laterally. So 1 inch below the most prominent part of the femur is your point of insertion of the pin. Stretched capsule and ligamented teres may reduce acetabular fragments. Distal femoral traction, alignment of traction along the axis of the femur, used for superior force acetabular fracture and proximal shaft femur fractures. Used when strong force needed or knee pathology is present. Now, what is the point of insertion to this? Draw the first line from before backwards at the lower level of the upper pole of the patella. So this is the upper pole of the patella. Draw a line before backwards here. Second line below upwards, anterior to the head of the fibula. So this is the head of the fibula. Anterior to that, below upwards. The point where the two line intersects the point of insertion of the Steinmann pin. 1990 traction originally devised by oblates, useful for subtrochanteric and proximal third femur fractures, especially in young children. Matches flexion of the proximal fragment. That's how it is. That's how 1990 traction is applied. So hip in 90 degree, knee in 90 degree. The 3 different ways to apply it. Dangers. Dangers are those of skeletal traction, stiffness and loss of extension of the knee, flexure contraction of the hip, injury to the lower femoral or upper tibial epiphyseal growth plates in children, neurovascular damage. Perkins traction is used for treatment of fractures of tibia and the femur from the subtrochanteric region distally. Distal tibial traction, useful in certain tibial plateau fractures. Pin inserted 5 cm above the level of the ankle joint, midway between the anterior and posterior borders of the tibia. This is the anterior border, this is the posterior border. You insert the pin midway. Avoid saphenous vein and maintain partial hip and knee flexion. Calcaneal traction, temporary traction for tibial shaft fractures or calcaneal fractures. Insert about 1/4 inches, that is 3 centimeters inferior and posterior to the medial malleolus. This is the medial malleolus. Okay. So 3 centimeters inferior and 3 centimeters posterior. That's where your pin should be. Olecranon pin traction. They are used for supracondylar or distal humerus fractures. Greater traction forces are allowed. Can make angular and rotational corrections. Place pin 1.25 inches distal to the tip of the olecranon and avoid the ulnar nerve. So that's the point of insertion. 3 centimeters is the tip of the olecranon. 3 centimeters distal to the tip of the olecranon and avoid the ulnar nerve. Metacarpal pin traction used for obtaining difficult reduction forearm or distal radius fractures. Once reduction obtained, pins can be incorporated in the cast. Gardner tongs, they're U-shaped tongs used for spinal tractions. In patients having cervical injury, they are easy to apply, placed directly above external auditory meatus in line with the mastoid process, just clear top of the ears. Pin-side care is important. Weight ranges from 2.3 kgs to 15.8 kgs for cervical spine. Excessive manipulation with placement must be avoided. Poor placement can cause flexion extension forces. Patient can get occipital decubitus. Touchfield tongs, they are fit into the parietal bones. Sedate the patient, shave the scalp locally. Draw a line on the scalp bisecting the skull from the front to the back. Draw a second line joining the tips of the mastoid processes which cross the first line at right angles. Fully open out the tongs. Management of patient's traction, care of the patient, care of the traction suspension system is also important. Radiographic examination, physiotherapy and removal of traction. In the patient, care of the injured limb. So pain, paresthesia, numbness, skin irritation, swelling, weakness of ankle, toe, wrist or finger movements should be seen. Radiographic examinations like X-ray should be done 2 to 3 times in a week, weekly for the next 3 weeks, okay. Monthly until union occurs, after each manipulation and after each weight change. Removal of traction, elbow fracture olecranon pins at 3 weeks, tibial fracture calcaneum pin at 3 to 6 weeks, trochanteric fracture, femur fracture at 6 weeks. Thank you.